nurses, Governor Bobber, are like, good day, doctors.
George Allen here. Good day, doctors.
Good evening, everyone. It is Dr. Politics and the Political Architect Show. It is the Fantastic Four today. We have a newcomer joining us all the way from Peekskill, New York, veteran of the Pataki Wars and a friend of Senator Alphonse D'Amato, alumnus of the famous, prestigious Eastland School, where her dorm room mother, the dietitian there, Mrs. Edna Garrett, was an inspiration to Heather. You know, did you go to Mrs. Garrett's funeral a few weeks ago when she passed away, or a few years ago when she passed away? It was so sad. Do you keep in touch with
I'm afraid.
your classmates there?
Afraid I missed that.
Welcome, Heather, also known as the Invisible Gal. Welcome. And then we have the ever-loving thing, Jeff Thornton, security expert. Welcome.
Thank you.
Jeff. And then we have Mr. Fantastic, Don Irvine. How are you, Don? Dean of Media Politics. Yeah, good. And then you have myself, the Human Torch, Dwight Patel. We had a lot of fun at the state party convention last week. I think I had more fun there than I'm allowed to have, frankly. First time, I think, in years. I think the last time I was able to get up and do a passion speech was at the Solomon's Island convention when we were talking about auxiliary voting privileges, you know. I think it was Solomon's.
Yeah,
was that,
I heard things about your speech. And,
yeah, I've got the video of it. I need to turn it into a clip, so maybe next week or the week after we can do a clip show of that. So it's a lot of fun, you know. And we've got a lot of fun things happening.
Dwight, I was going to say, even though I didn't go to that convention. Can you hear me?
Yes. Yeah, we can hear you now. You're having some audio issues.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Anyway,
you were saying you didn't go to the convention? Yeah.
Yeah, I was saying, even though I didn't go to I thought that the fact that things are getting back to normal, it looked a heck of a, based on the pictures you took and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
This is, we're it's, you can mix and mingle with people. You don't have to really wear masks. You can actually do this, and I guess some of the delegates were ready to fight for whatever they wanted to fight for. So they were.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing we had was, I think, the bylaws amendment about donating to Democrats, which I think is a no-brainer, frankly. If you're a Republican, you shouldn't be donating to Democrats, frankly. And I don't care if it's, and my view is, if you're going to be donating to Democrats, then maybe you shouldn't be on the Central Committee. If you feel you're in a line of work where you have to, it's imperative that you donate to Democrats, perhaps you shouldn't be on a Central Committee. Because, we are the Republican Central Committee. We're not the wishy-washy, half Dem, half Republican Central Committee. We're the Republican Central Committee. And we do have principles in our party. We're the party of family values, tax cuts, and national security. And that's what we always will be. We're the party of Reagan and Goldwater and Nixon and George W. Bush and other great Republicans,
Dwight, I understand that. I mean, I think, in general, that's correct. Though I do think those that have, contributed to Democrats in the past, I mean, I think they're able to explain why they did it.
I think this isn't about past, it's going forward.
Yeah. I mean, but their people seem to be attacked for what they did in the past. If it was really recent, then I would probably have more of an issue. If it was 10 or 15 years ago, I'd have less of an issue.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, everybody can change their mind.
I mean, here's the thing. We all know Tony Campbell. Tony Campbell was Republicans for Obama, and a lot of people still hold it against him. I being one of them, frankly. I don't think I think it was a travesty that he was the second vice chairman of our party after he supported Barack Obama. I think he basically did a big disservice. I mean, I like Tony, but I think, yes, you're on the Central Committee, fine. We can, let bygones be bygones. But here's the thing. You should not be in leadership. You should think about what you did and why you did that. And the fact that you supported Obama because he was the first Illinoisan that was running for president. That's grew up in Hawaii, the first Hawaiian-born president, is not a justification to vote for somebody. You vote for. I mean, like I said, I keep saying John McClane was not a greatest of our alternatives, but I voted for John McCain. Why?
Yes, he was.
I don't know. Mr. Campaign Finance Reform, Mr. Keating 5, Mr. I'm all for me and no one else. I mean, the guy was not a team player. There was a better guy that was running that didn't win the primary named Fred Thompson, then again, he really didn't want the job that badly, as he put it. But enough about that. Crazy Uncle Joe's been in Europe this week. Don.
Yeah. He's been doing the G7. I have to admit, last week when I was at the gym and I saw the graphic as they were all getting on those little platforms or podiums or what you want to call them, I thought, okay, this is just a little bit weird to me. I saw memes that somebody posted and said, name this band. I mean, it looked like you were getting up on stage to get a gold medal or something like that and whatnot. It just looked a little odd. But really, I mean, what was the purpose for Biden to go there? I mean, in terms of what did the U.S. gain by having Biden, go there? Because to me, it certainly didn't seem that, the U.S. really gained, much of anything. Biden seems to be the kind of politician who was going to listen to those other world leaders and say, yeah, sure, that sounds good. Let's do whatever you want to do. And I realize that not everybody's a fan, not everybody out there is a fan of Trump necessarily, but he was tough, and he kind of reshaped things diplomatically. So this is the way we want to do things. Biden, I think, I'm just afraid that Biden's just going to get rolled by world leaders, and any U.S.
I think he just got rolled. I mean, you listen to his, like the way. First of all, what was that whole thing? Taking his jacket off, putting it on the ground, and then it's like that was a little weird. I thought his meeting with Putin was another little. And why couldn't they?
A very bad idea.
Why couldn't they do a joint press conference?
I'm going to put the summit with Putin in Dr. Politics terms. Okay. All here at one time or another have been either been a candidate or been representing the candidate who was running against somebody who had 10 times as much money and was being taken seriously when our candidate was not being taken seriously, was the nobody. And what did we really want when we were in that situation? We wanted a debate where we could put them side by side on the stage with a more serious Democrat candidate and be taken serious and have our candidate be taken seriously.
Mm-hmm.
Having Joe Biden stand next to Vladimir Putin is doing exactly that because, basically, yes, Russia has nuclear weapons. Yes, it has an army, but otherwise it's basically Zimbabwe. So why are you even giving this person the legitimacy of having the president of the United States, the leader of the world, standing side by side with him? Rant over.
And here's the thing. I think it's also funny, then you don't do a joint press conference. You let Putin go around, trash America, talk about BLM and critical race theory.
Not doing a joint press conference was the right move because that would even enhance that whole thing of they're standing next to each other. I mean, this guy Putin. He's an assassin, a slime ball. You stand next to him, but you don't do the summit in the first place.
Then again, who am I kidding? Even if they did a joint press conference, I don't think Crazy Uncle Joe would have said anything when Putin would bring up BLM riots in the streets, holding prisoners, without trials, which, by the way, they are doing. There's a lot of January 6th folks that are still waiting to be charged, but it is what it is, But I don't think Joe's responsible. Yeah, that's true. And that would have been it, And he would have gone back to playing with his lucite blocks, so to speak.
And I just didn't see a lot of media coverage in terms of criticism of Biden for doing this, because I think Heather's right. I mean, we've given we're giving Putin legitimacy, and that's not really what we should be doing. They were all over him for anything that happened with Russia, but the media seems to be relatively disinterested. They don't want too much, because I think that makes them mad in terms of how differently they're treating them, because they are definitely giving Biden a pass. We're not even 6 months, we're just even less than 5 months into the Biden administration, and we're just not seeing the media being very tough at all on Biden. And we kind of wonder how much longer this is going to go on. I begin to think this could be a 4-year honeymoon with the media and Biden at this point.
And you heard that one reporter that he got really mad at. He snapped at the CNN reporter.
Right.
And
yeah.
The CNN reporter apologized to dear leaders. Oh, sorry, Master. I didn't mean to ask such a tough question.
Well, I mean, he came back and he said it probably shouldn't have been such a wiseacre himself. But the thing is that this was one of the things that Biden had been criticized for in the past, was that he had his temperament a bit short, and so here he is being kind of pressed, and he's not used to getting pressed on like that. The idea is that the media is supposed to love to adore me, and don't ask me tough questions because I don't have the ability to answer a tough question. It's like, that's why I have people. That's why they tell me not to have press conferences in general, because after a while I get totally lost, forget what I'm saying.
Well, I know people that have gotten accustomed to taking afternoon naps with this year of lockdowns and working from home. I mean, he probably didn't get his afternoon nap in, so he was a little cranky, because he didn't get that. And Mrs. Biden didn't have a Snickers bar to give him, so he was hangry also probably. But I do want to point out one thing. What is the matter with Boris Johnson? Boris Johnson, the British Prime Minister. Did you hear him talk? It was like, Joe was a little bit all over the place. He was a little nutty too in his comments, and I thought he was one of our people. He kind of seemed a little squishy when it came to climate change and those myths, so to speak.
Yeah, I don't know. That's an interesting question, Dwight, because I think it looked for a long time that Boris Johnson and Donald Trump were basically kind of twins, just on but they were across the pond from each other. But I think Johnson also has shown with his politics over the years too, is that he will do whatever is politically expedient, and so that he knows that Biden is the president of the United States. Biden has made this big climate change push and everything like this, and he wants to go along and get along at this point. And unfortunately, what you're going to see is that you're not really going to have world leaders coming out against Biden. They want U.S. aid, money, and whatever help we can give them. And if this is what Joe Biden wants, I think they'll march relatively in lockstep to do that. If it means the U.S. providing cash and other assistance.
I agree.
I think you all know that climate change is probably an issue that plays a certain way in Britain that's different from how it plays here, and he's also thinking about the electorate there.
So let's bring Jeff into the conversation.
That's a different kind of expediency, but it's expediency all the same.
Yes.
So my take on Russia, for example, is not so much the political. Well, it's semi-political, but the thing that concerns me most with Russia is actually how we are considering doing a kind of it's not like a prisoner exchange program, but kind of like a criminal exchange program where we ask Russia to give us jurisdiction over their crimes, in return that we would give Russia jurisdiction over some of our separate crimes. And Russia and the associated countries is a actual active cyber threat. So certainly we have cause to be concerned about some of the actors within Russia.
Having a cybercrime commission between the U.S. and Russia is like inviting Islamic State onto a commission on terrorism.
Yeah, that's going to happen next.
That arrangement there. So that's my main concern. I think it's important to have normalize relationships with all the countries, if no other reason than to show that we've got some skin in the game. So I don't know if we could just ignore having a meeting with Putin. Honestly, I'm concerned about like some of Russia's aggression towards some of its neighboring countries. So that's a concern. I mean, in their involvement in Turkey was a concern for me as well. So I think the activities that Russia performs in the political global domain as well are issues of concern. I don't think we're going to really push on them at all. I think Trump would be much more the person to actually push on Russia if they were trying to do something to exert their power. But again, I think it's important to have a discourse with them. As for the other leaders, I don't know. I mean, it's like a lot of it is just showpieces. I think it's just so people can say that they've got their photo op, that they've gotten their time with the president, that we are like back to normal, whatever that means.
Yeah, I mean, and there were news reports. I remember seeing something on MSNBC. So they kept highlighting us like how world opinion has put U.S. has changed dramatically under Biden versus Trump. But they were relying on a study that actually didn't actually interview or survey very many world leaders. They actually took a very small percentage of that. So it wasn't really a very good survey to begin with. But it did fit a media narrative of like, once again, Trump is bad, Biden is good. Biden in office means that we're reemerging on the world stage. We're going to regain the respect that we lost under Trump, that type of a thing. So it's Trump still looms large in the minds of the media of the people. I have no doubt that the world leaders that Trump attacked are relieved not to have Trump in office.
By the way, Joe Biden did refer to Vladimir Putin as President Trump also. By the way, Joe Biden handed over a list of 16 sites that are off limits to the Soviets, the Russian Empire, to attack. But everything that's not on the list is free game, according to Joe Biden. How stupid on a scale of 1 to 10 was that? Giving them a list. Don't you dare attack these. You can attack other stuff, but not this one. It comes down to, it's like, how idiotic are you? My thoughts are, now you've just given the Russians a list. I mean, we need to retaliate, frankly. I mean, the fact that he gave the green light for Nord Stream pipeline, which is something that President Trump had blocked that. What kind of message does this send to our allies in New Europe?
It's a disaster.
Like
that's what it is.
I mean, the message it sends to the Ukraine.
I know about Nord Stream. Let me explain about Nord Stream. Okay. Here's the thing. The Germans will tell you that this is all just economics. It's not. Okay. Right now, there's enough pipeline capacity to send the Germans all the Russian gas they want that they could possibly ever use. Some of it comes through a pipeline to Ukraine. The Russians are not going to start a major war in Ukraine as long as the gas has to go through Ukraine, because if they start a major war with tanks and bombs and blow the place to smithereens, the pipeline's going to get damaged and they're not going to get any money from the Germans for gas. They put in another pipeline that replaces an already existing perfectly good pipeline that goes to Eastern Europe, and all of a sudden they can blow Ukraine to smithereens and not interfere with the gas.
Nobody will care. And I think that's a little bit is part of the problem here, with Joe Biden, saying that, he basically gave the Russians the green light to invade Ukraine, frankly, because that's what's going to happen, and it sends a message. What kind of message does it send to our friends in Poland or Hungary?
They're not. I know, because I talked to them. I have friends in Poland. I talked to them. They ain't happy.
And I think we've abandoned our allies in the new Europe, so to speak. For the whole purpose of the whole thing was we got to be nice to the Ruskies. You part of the term for the old Star Trek.
I think they're trying to be nice to Merkel. But frankly, that's stupid too, because Merkel's not going to be October.
Yeah, I mean,
and in a way, interfering in the German election, because Nord Stream is an issue in the German election. And so
Where
by
is Helmut
basically
Kohl these days? I mean, where's Helmut
seat
Kohl?
underground, unfortunately.
I know. As is Helmut Schmidt, the great German leaders,
That
of the
part is
days of yesterday.
fortunately, though. No one misses Helmut Schmidt, but
he wasn't.
Yeah,
he's not as bad as Merkel.
Yeah, I mean, Heather, I mean, what do you see in Germany? Because I'm kind of curious, when
the
with
Greens are probably going to be in the new government. Whatever you may think about the Greens on every other issue, they're against Nord Stream.
Well, that's good to know. I mean, I will give credit to the Ukrainian soccer team because they're having these champion. They're going through a soccer tournament in Europe, and the soccer team originally, their jersey, they included Crimea. They did basically a map, and they included Crimea, which obviously didn't fit well with Russia.
Legally,
but that goes back to
Crimea
what you were saying before. I mean, they just took over Crimea, right? I mean,
you can invade a country that doesn't make it legally yours.
Right.
Legally, Crimea is still, according to UN General Assembly, is still Ukrainian territory, and according to U.S. policy.
Remember our last Great War in Crimea? Remember those days, Heather, back when we basically, this would have been before World War One, if memory serves me correct, and I believe it was the last hurrah of the Habsburgs in the war in Crimea, if you recall. I mean, you're a student of history.
Well, you don't know what you're talking about. You're definitely not a history major.
No, I never was, but I do know that is true. So one of our finest, most overlooked governors of this great state of ours, Fairlight. But over the weekend, I got the pleasure of meeting his nephew, who's on the Baltimore County Central Committee now.
Who's this?
But was that
Agnew's nephew?
Yeah.
Okay.
So every show must have usually winds up with some Richard Nixon reference.
Right.
A short period of time before a long period of time.
Yeah, and President Nixon knew how to deal with the Russians, frankly. President Nixon would not have given the Russians a list of 16 sites they're not allowed to attack. President Nixon would not have met with Putin. President Nixon probably would have retaliated with when they shut down our gas line. We would have shut them down, frankly. I mean, one thing people don't seem to understand: Russia is a third-rate power. They're not a world power anymore. They are basically a third-world country if they didn't have nuclear weapons. And they've got an aging nuclear arsenal. No matter how many times they're going to say we got this.
Nuclear weapons.
Yeah, or Pakistan with nuclear. Well, that is exactly there. They're Pakistan with nuclear weapons, frankly.
I think the problem with Russia is that they're dependent upon the territories which left the USSR, like we mentioned. I keep forgetting the name.
Ukraine.
Ukraine, exactly. So in San Francisco, I know a lot of companies use Ukrainian programmers. I mean, that's like kind of that is the center of of industry. I mean, there is a lot of business there in Ukraine that Russia really wants to get their hands on. So it makes sense that from a socioeconomic standpoint, they want to reclaim a lot of these territories that would provide them some economic growth, because they don't really have a lot in Moscow. I mean, it's really in the neighboring countries where they have the natural resources and such. I mean, Siberia has a lot of frozen tundra and stuff.
Not natural resources; it's human resources.
Well, I was going to say, the natural gas. I mean, Russia does have a lot of that natural gas resource.
And remember,
yes, they have gas, they have oil. Their exports are oil, gas, and cyber
But here's the thing. At the end of the day, these guys, what we need to do is help our allies. We need to put ground-based. We need to put Minuteman missiles in Poland. We need to put missiles in Ukraine. We need to protect as a deterrent from a Russian invasion. I'm even putting ground-based missiles in the Ukraine, frankly, pointed at Moscow. I think they'd think twice before invading the Ukraine if if we put some nuclear missiles in the ground there. Which I believe it was Barack Hussein Obama who basically
You have to do it really quietly, or they nuke the place first.
Yeah,
I'm not sure that's a great idea.
I take that back because the Biden CIA can't do anything, frankly. We need it's kind of like how in the '80s when GI Joe went from fighting Cobra to fighting toxic polluters, and corporations. That's how.
I was going to say, you need to consider too that if the U.S. were to expand our nuclear presence to other like NATO type countries, it wouldn't just affect Russia. I mean, we got countries like Pakistan, China, that would take that as a sign of aggression as well.
Good.
So,
I hope they do. I think we should put. Unfortunately, the Formosans won't let us put ground-based nukes in Taiwan. I think we should do that. I think the Japanese are wrong. They should let us put ground-based nuclear missiles in Japan, South Korea. So we need to contain China the way we contained the Soviet Empire. Frankly, we need to choke them off.
I really think that's a different problem. Russia was a nuclear threat. China is an economic threat.
See, China is one natural disaster with third world status, frankly. Their growth is slowing down. They just had a big defector today, which is, if it's true, that's awesome. But knowing the Biden administration, they'll probably hand them over again to the Chicoms. But we could use a lot of Cold War policies that we used on the Soviets. We never would have given the Soviets MFN, most favored nation status, that we gave China. We never would have given. See, we kind of let China become this economic powerhouse by helping them, by doing these things, if we never gave them most favored nation status, they would be still riding around on bicycles in Peking, frankly,
But we're in the situation now. We can't just cut all ties with China, and we've seen the double-edged sword that is the tariffs and such with China. So they have as much power as we do economically. So if we push on them, they're pushing on us, and that's not going to help either of us. So again, we can thump our chest as much as we want to, but until we get ourselves in an independent status, we are dependent on China. That's just the nature of it.
And that's not going to change at all under this president. This president, his fraudulency, it basically bows at the altar of Beijing. Frankly,
but it's not just the president; it's also Congress too. I mean, you have to have support across the board for changing policy, changing taxes, changing tax benefits. There's so many things that would play into getting businesses back into the U.S. But at this point, it's we're so far behind in that process that again, it's still a problem. All the semiconductor manufacturers, they're in Taiwan, they're in China. We don't have any real semi-fab conductor plants in the U.S. If we did, we would be in a situation where we can't even sell new cars because we don't have the chips for it.
I mean, with this Wuhan virus,
we need a
that should be a wake-up call.
As well as a change in politics, though. People need to start to think seriously about the fact that being dependent on China in that way is a problem. And that's something that people are starting to think about, but it's going to take time. You have to get to the point where a business says being dependent this way is bad for business.
That's true.
Yeah, I think actually that's a really good point, Heather, because that is part of the problem with a lot of things is that until our major corporations stand up and then do about this, how do you change the mindset of the American public otherwise that we're overly dependent upon China and we've got a problem here? Corporations, they love dealing with China at this point, and they want to bring more business in there to make more money in there, but we're definitely seeing some of the problems here with these constraints, as Jeff has mentioned, with all the semiconductors and everything like this. But we are really getting more and more beholden to China. These supply chain problems are horrible that are affecting us. But it doesn't seem that major corporations haven't really made a big fuss about this at this point, and they really need to do more.
Right. So to your point, Don, I mean, consider Disney. Disney's bent the knee to China. We actually have movies that are based upon Chinese standards so that we can distribute them, because admittedly China is a big market. So it's not just the US market we're making movies for. We're making them for the international audience, which pretty much means China. So we are looking to them to guide movie making. And of course we still have the supposed labor laws.
Censored in really bad ways.
Yeah. Right.
As a result, we'll never see Iron Man versus the Mandarin because the Chicoms, Disney kowtows to the Chicoms. I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, the Mulan movie was filmed, I want to say, just miles away from their Uyghur concentration camp they have. And Disney redid the movie because the Chinese didn't like something about the dragon or whatever it was. I don't know what it was, but maybe an Eddie Murphy's character. I don't know, but I'm never a fan of some of the Disney movies, frankly. If Disney didn't buy Marvel, I probably wouldn't like any Disney movies, but they've come a long way from Witch Mountain, if you ask me. They've come a long way from the Witch Mountain series.
I think it's also incumbent on us, though, as citizens, to say we're not going to go see a movie that, has been censored in that way, and people have to stand up and say we're not going to do that, and they have to start realizing they're going to lose.
But it almost doesn't matter nowadays.
Customers in the free world, and maybe they care more about the Chinese sales. I don't know, but
right, yeah, because movie sales may go down a little bit if we have people resisting it, but honestly, it's not even the American sales that make movies nowadays. It's the foreign countries that really get the movies into the billions. I mean, we get movies into the millions, but it's China and other companies that get into the billions. So it's that market that people want to get.
I think you can make a case in Europe too that about the human rights issues. You're probably not gonna, if the Chinese market is that big, I don't know.
Right, and we have supposed laws to keep us from doing business with the sweatshops in China, right. But the way that they structured in China,
laws been on the books for 100 years. You cannot legally import anything that's made with convict labor to the U.S. But it's really hard to prove it because
China has ways of like laundering that labor, so it doesn't look like it's really from these sweatshops.
Because come on, can we believe that some prison workers made this phone of mine?
But that's the truth of it. Yeah. I mean, this is not even the Foxconn issues where we have.
Problem.
Yeah, this is not even the big like Apple, semicap or semiconductor manufacturing place like Foxconn, where we've got people committing suicide because of the labor conditions. These are worse than that, and this is just what people don't have a choice. It's either Chinese immigrant laborers, people that they have dissidents, whatever, that are forced into doing this stuff. That
a lot of them are people who are literally locked up, who they're working in literal prison conditions, making whatever for export, and we just don't know because there's subcontractors involved. So the company that's selling to the U.S. is not the company that's doing the business in the prison camp. It's 3 levels of subcontractors, and how do you trace it?
Exactly, that's the problem.
And also, sticking with China, I mean, all this stuff, they've effectively used the Wuhan virus to shut down the pro-democracy folks in Hong Kong, frankly, over the years. There's no more outrage. We're not, there's no coverage about what's happening in Hong Kong, free Hong Kong. Don and I are big believers of free Hong Kong.
There's two issues there. So first of all, is the whole Chinese censorship. And then there's the China One movement, which is basically says any media coverage which is negative towards China, gets squashed. So you can't, claim that, like Taiwan, other places that China is claiming as their property really is separate. I mean, they want to claim dominion over all these places, not just Hong Kong. So if you go against that policy, I mean, you risk really being blacklisted by China, which has great economic impacts. We're talking about the thing about companies. Yes, companies are hurt by China. I mean, they want to do business with China because not playing ball with China really does affect you, and you're going to get.
Look at the NBA. The NBA basically was it the Rockets player that had to apologize for making anti-China comments?
Yeah, it was.
I get what it was.
Daryl Morey.
Yeah,
who's now with the 76ers.
Somebody I saw forwarded the clip and said another hostage video.
I mean, that's the thing. I mean, and we've talked about this during this month because we went through the anniversary of Tiananmen Square. Right. We know how passionate Jeff is about the situation in China and some of the things that he's been following there. And this is it. I mean, Dwight, you're right too. Is just the virus. This whole pandemic. This was like manna from heaven. This was a blessing for China. This was exactly what they needed to quell the uprising in Hong Kong. They were starting to do it. They were trying to get that. They were trying to get their new laws implemented there, and they were having a problem with it because Hong Kongers came out and they protested in huge numbers and really kind of threw the Chinese government for a loop. But when it became technically unsafe to gather in these groups, this allowed them to fill the passage of the laws. They basically dismantled all the freedom-loving people that were in their parliament and that type of thing, all these elected officials, and then they went after everybody they could identify that had sympathized or had led this freedom movement, this free speech movement, in essence. And they've been jailing them and doing this. And so I hate to use the word that chilling effect, because the liberals love to use that, but in essence that's what they've done, is they have had a chilling effect on the freedom of people in Hong Kong. And it's really a shame, I think, for us, who believe in freedom and we believe in liberalism and things like this. Hong Kong was not supposed to be like this at this stage. China had made promises about how they were going to operate it, and once again, as Dr. Fred Schwartz said, you can trust a communist to be communist, and that's basically what it boils down to, is that there's underlying. We know what they're like. I can't say I'm overly surprised at how they're behaving now, but it's extremely disappointing, obviously.
Yeah, and here's what I was done. The different. Here's, and I'm not making. Okay, I'll say. Okay, Lech Walesa, Václav Havel. You had the resistance in Eastern Europe that stood up to the communists, right? Yeah, they were. They were able to at least have a network to get. That's, I think, the one disadvantage the Hong Kong freedom movement has. They have no leader like a Václav Havel or a Lech Walesa, nor do they have a network to get their information out to the West. They were able to smuggle
leaders, but they're being imprisoned.
Yeah, I believe Lech Walesa was thrown in jail, as was Václav Havel, spent some time in the Soviet gulags. My point is, they actually had a network of how to get stories out to the West, and back then, our journalists were actually carried up to publicize the stories. Like the Sakharovs. Or,
I know something about this process and getting the word out to getting journalists to talk about people who were imprisoned in Eastern Europe was not easy. I mean, it took a lot of people in this country, really some of them good friends of mine.
My point is
working tirelessly to get the word out.
Yeah, and Heather, my point is,
maybe there really are people working hard enough on Hong Kong.
Yes, but I'm wondering, let's say if a big story fell in MSNBC's lap, you think they would touch that story if they thought it would? They'd offend their Chinese masters a little bit. I think not. I think
it's not just the news organizations. We got to understand who owns the news organizations. So you're talking about people like Jeff Bezos and other people that have relationships with China. So it's not just the news; it's the fact that they're controlled. We don't have independent news anymore. We really don't. I mean, it's all controlled by somebody. So pick your side, but it's not. There's no neutral really anymore.
Yeah, and
I have to say though, honestly, if you go back to the 70s and the 80s, there were a lot of news stations that didn't want to tell you anything bad about Eastern Europe or the Soviet
Union. I was still able to read.
I mean, I'm old enough to remember this stuff.
I think we're close to the same age.
I remember,
Heather.
for instance, there was a documentary in 1987 about the Ukrainian famine, and PBS wouldn't show it, and a big long fuss about it because the Soviet embassy complained when PBS was going to show it, and they pulled it and they weren't going to show it, and finally it was only shown as part of Bill Buckley's firing line. Yeah, because it was controversial to talk about millions of people dying.
Right. I mean, I don't think we still recognize the Armenian genocide. I mean, I don't think that's some people know about it, but I don't think it's been nationally recognized.
And I think there was a documentary on Poland that was never shown in the United States, which featured the Pope, Ronald Reagan. I think it was called "Let Poland Be Poland." That was never aired in the United States. It aired all over the world, but not here. Why was that? Because CBS was probably run by Moscow. But that's just me. I think there's a few people, I think, Don, you and I know, that would agree with that. That Soviets were running CBS.
I'm not sure I'd go quite that far, but
Bob Kriebel would probably agree with me.
But as the late Arno de Borgrave, I mean, when they talk about disinformation, kind of, I think there's all the disinformation. I mean, our media was definitely very culpable in swallowing up the Soviet line and just spewing that back out, to the public. So there's a lot of stuff. I mean, a lot of things that Heather was saying too about trying to get any coverage, any media interested in Eastern Europe. It just, it wasn't going to happen, and then after the wall falls and you get more information, and it's like, wow, those things actually really happened. They're incredulous about it. It's like, look, we tried this, but you wouldn't listen. You refused to swallow, the Soviet line, communist line, and that's what you did. And now the truth comes out. And you're like, I can't believe that that this happened. But they're surely not apologetic about it.
No, they're not.
Walter Durant.
You and I. Go ahead.
Yeah,
He's still gets claimed by the New York Times.
Hey, look, my father fought that battle with the New York Times. My father fought that battle with the New York Times about the Pulitzer and said, you need to return that Pulitzer Prize for the reporting that he did, and they dug in pretty firmly about that, despite I think facts prove that Durante, he never deserved that. He had totally covered this whole thing up.
He told complete and utter lies, and there were people who died to get the truth out. There's a great new movie that was out. There's a great new movie actually that's out recently called Mr. Jones. If you get a chance to see it, it's about Gareth Jones, the Welsh journalist who actually did get the truth out.
Oh, I got one. That's good.
Yeah, absolutely. Is it on Netflix?
I don't know.
It probably
I
is.
saw it in the theater before the pandemic.
Wow. It's a movie. I think it's probably been over 2 years since I've been in this out of any movie theaters.
Sounds like Jefferson is going to look that up.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. So Mr. Jones came out in 2019. I don't think it's out on Netflix. It's just
on demand right now. Probably is. Should be on demand somewhere.
Probably, but yeah, it's.
Yeah. It was made by the Polish director Agnieszka Holland. It's the title is kind of a double entendre because it's also George Orwell's Farmer Jones.
Okay.
Interesting. Yeah.
All right. Let's a lot of things. We spent 3/4 of the show going through this. Let's hit a few more topics before we wrap up. I did want to be, while we're still overseas, everybody's feeling here. The Netanyahu era has ended in Israel for now. But the thing is that when you have a parliamentary form of government, I don't think anything is guaranteed. They've got this kind of put together coalition. They're going to have a prime minister for 6 months on one, and then he'll turn it over to another prime minister. I'm not sure how that's going to work. I think that's a recipe for failure. Bibi, is still out there, and he's going to be throwing, things at them, all the way along.
And I think and if you notice, Hamas has started shelling Israel all over again. I think this government's going to fall within the next 8 weeks. It'll fall, and Bibi should be back. His party should get a clear majority because, frankly, these guys are all soft on terrorists. I know they like to say, I think the guy is a former Bibi cabinet guy that's the new PM right now. But he's soft on terrorism. And like I said, 6 to 8 weeks, the government of Israel will fall. It's kind of like, the 1970s in Italy, if it's Tuesday, the government's going to fall. It's a
very fragile coalition, right? And they've already had 4 elections. So this falls, we'll go to a 5th election. Yeah. But something, Dwight, this will be interesting because you may be right that this might be what Netanyahu, he was unable to form a government after all these elections. But if things go, sour, on them very quickly, maybe Netanyahu will finally get the support that he needs to actually put together something, a coalition that for his, that he can actually do this with. So, let's see what happens.
Yeah. And I think, as I think is, like I said, I give it 6 to 8 weeks and the government will fall. Because I think that shelling from Hamas, and when the new regime in Israel is going to be soft on terrorism, and it'll be more. This is kind of like the second coming of the Ehud Barak administration, if you recall, back in the days when Ehud Barak was ready to give away the store, and Yasser Arafat didn't want to take it, which tells me they really don't want peace. They just want to kill Israelis in Israel, frankly, the one country where they get to have freedom and democracy in the Middle East, for a true American-style democracy, I should say. But at the end of the day, big mistake. Bibi is still the future of Israel. I think he'll be back as prime minister in a few months. He
won't fade away. I mean, he's one guy who's, I think he's not happy with the way things turned out, and he'll be to get back in there again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Any thoughts, Jeff? Heather?
Yeah, the whole Israel thing. I mean, I tried to touch it because that's such a hot button, and it's just like I understand. I freely admit that there are so many nuances and things that I can't quite comprehend. So it's just an awful situation. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I feel bad for both sides because it's still a humanitarian disaster. I mean, both for Palestinians and for Israel.
Yeah, and if Hamas wouldn't shell and try and kill innocent Israelis, the Israelis wouldn't have to retaliate. Frankly,
but it's so hard to separate, the rhetoric from the actual truth, because every side is pushing their own.
But let me tell you, what we know is every war that has happened in Israel has been started by its neighbors. If you go back to 1948. You had the Arab neighbors trying to crush Israel in a cradle. The 1967 war, you had, again, the neighbors go around trying to crush Israel. You had the Intifada, where they started the rock throwings back in the 80s. Israel has never been the aggressor for any of the wars. There is a clear and cut. You have the bad guys are the Palestinians, Hamas, whatever you want to call them. They are the bad guys. Yasser Arafat was a terrorist thug, just like Hanan Ashwari was a terrorist thug. I don't care how nice she sounds on 60 Minutes and all that, but she was also a terrorist sympathizer and a thug. She knew about terrorist attacks and she did nothing about it. She professed, I believe in peace and all that, and everybody loved her in America. They loved her on 60 Minutes, because, but she was nothing more than Yasser Arafat in a skirt, frankly.
So again, I won't get too deep into that, but Israel has displaced Palestinians, and Israel has tried to expand their borders. And whether or not you consider that to be an aggressive act or whatever, I mean it is something that's happened, and it's no secret that Israel and its neighbors were never really on friendly terms, and everyone kind of claims that land is like the Holy Land. So every faction believes that part is kind of like their heritage. So of course there's going to be contention over that. It's just like I said, it's a difficult subject because there is no there is no be a peace that everyone agrees upon, because there can never be peace when everyone believes that they own the rights to that land. It's like saying I don't know, good examples there could be people who believe that DC should never be incorporated to something else because DC is like its own its own unit. So again, it's like how are you ever going to have complete agreement of how to deal with DC? Because again, you've got some people living there that again, it's not a great comparison, but the point is that in the case of Israel, it's just there are so many sides to it that it's not just one. You can't just take like one viewpoint and say this is the story we're going to go with, because I think it's much more nuanced than that. But that's my opinion. But again, I claim not to be any kind of expert on that, because it is, in my opinion, much more nuanced than I have done the research to portray.
All right, let's move on. Let's come back to the U.S. I wanted to get everybody's opinion about the Supreme Court ruling this week on Obamacare. It was a 7-2 vote. It's hit once again. Republicans have been fighting this ever since Obamacare went into effect. But I don't know that I disagree with the Supreme Court in the sense it's just like I've always found that trying to fight this in the Supreme Court was always going to be an uphill battle in general. Yeah. Just on a practical basis. Once you start putting in these kind of entitlements and things like this, it's really difficult.
This one, I think, this case just struck me as kind of dubious.
Yeah. And here's the thing, Don, also with this whole, unfortunately, when Republicans nominate people to the Supreme Court, they actually are independent.
Getting rid of Obama, I'm going to have to go. You're going to have to up with something else.
Yeah.
And it's got to be
And
a
my point is,
legislative thing.
if the shoe were on the other foot and the Democrats had the majority and they didn't like, let's say instead of Obamacare, we had McCain care and they wanted to take out McCain care, every Democrat would have voted to strike down McCain care. Republican justices are truly independent judiciaries. Do we agree with them 100%? No, we don't. We agree with them maybe when they agree with us, frankly. Are they wrong? Maybe. But, I mean, Judge Roberts, he could have put this away really easily, but Judge Roberts went the wrong way. But that's the problem with Republicans. We believe in free thinkers and free flow of thoughts, unlike the Democrats, where they all they put party before everything else, while we put nation first, country first.
Right, but I think Heather had a good point there. I mean, one of the problems with this was just that Republicans really didn't have a strong alternative that would replace this, that would be palatable to, and once you start giving, and this law has been in effect for a number of years now, once you start giving them all these things, it's really hard to take it away. I think the Republicans, they have chipped away at of Obamacare, which were some things that needed to be fixed. But I mean, look, personally, initially, I wasn't generally for Obamacare, and my premiums definitely went up.
I hate it.
Despite Obama's promise that it would down, when it went up. But I personally benefited initially by being able, by even my kids on my plan longer than they normally would have been able to, and that was a plus.
Were you able to keep your doctor? Hey Don, were you able to keep your doctor if you liked him? I was not.
Yeah, and we know
the other side of that
Go ahead,
letting people keep their kids. The other side of letting people keep their health care through and there were a lot of cheap policies available for young people, and all that's gone away because everybody's doing ads plans, so the schools don't feel the need to offer it. When I was in grad school, I got this super cheap plan that I couldn't get now because, and not everybody can do that. I mean, some people have parents who are retired, they're on Medicare, they can't put their kids on Medicare with them. Some people have parents who are just for one reason or another, they're not willing to do that. They're not willing to keep helping past 18 when they don't have to. Some may come from dysfunctional families and the parents aren't able or willing to help them, and that leaves those kids on the loop.
Yeah, I mean, I remember those plans. My kids had those plans, which was beneficial. I mean, I had to actually keep at least one of my younger one on the plan when he was in school because, anything that he needed to do out there, it was better for him to be taken care of by the student plan because our plan did not cover him, for most of the things when he was at school in Utah. If he'd been here, it would have been a different story. But being in Utah, it kind of forced me to basically say, well, we're going to have to pay for the student plan. But that worked out okay. And and exchanges didn't work out very well. And I will say Obamacare probably did not help the Democrats, in the gubernatorial election. I mean, right? Martin O'Malley gave Anthony Brown, says, you handle the exchange.
That thing was a disaster.
It was a disaster.
I hate that website.
Yeah. I mean, it certainly did not help his campaign for governor. Just another plus for Hogan. Giving another advantage to Hogan that year.
Yep.
And,
I still hate the website, even now, though.
It's, here's the thing. I hope Maryland Democrats and Republicans remember how it was before Larry Hogan. Taxes, rain taxes, 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 taxes. Do you guys really want to go back to the way it was 8 years ago, or do you want to stay on the Hogan vision of less taxes, smaller government, accountable government,
Well, that's the thing I kind of get worried about in Maryland, though. It's just that as you watch some of these very far left type of politicians, or you watch President Biden, who's being heavily influenced, by the Squad and Bernie Sanders, is that if the Democrats run, a far left type of candidate and he wins the gubernatorial race, come next year, is that, if you thought some of these other Democrat governors were bad in the past, you ain't seen nothing yet, kind of thing. Because I think they've been very much emboldened by what they've been able to do nationally overall in general, and they're just going to run the table, and it's going to be really miserable. I mean, that might actually force me out of Maryland in the end.
Yeah, and
you also have a state legislature that's moved to the left in the Valley. There were things you couldn't do because the legislature wouldn't go along with it. That's no longer the case.
Who would have thunk it that we'd miss old Mikey Miller and Mikey Bush? Who would have thunk it? It's kind of like, a few weeks ago we were talking about how Montgomery County went from Gleason to Goody, I should say, to Sid Kramer, to Neil Potter, to Doug Duncan, and the height of our county executives was probably Gil Goody and Jim Gleason, and it's always it's hard to believe. Today we're looking back. Hey, that Sid Kramer guy wasn't so bad. Doug Duncan wasn't so bad compared to this guy. It's
everything's relative.
Right. So I'll just talk about taxes really quickly. This is my issue with taxes: is that there's always going to be taxes. The taxes should be directed towards a policy that you're looking to implement. In my opinion, one of the biggest problems with taxes is the actual property tax for homes and those kind of things. Because what happens typically is they start off, based upon some reasonable value for localities, for the fire department, for other utilities and stuff like that, for infrastructure. These things get earmarked for these programs, but because it's kind of like a waving your hand kind of thing, it's not officially allocated. It's just we have this money, we're going to call it for this program. Then they say that these programs don't have enough money because they use the money for other programs, and then so they need to create a millage or something like that to increase the taxable rate, and so that goes up, and it's just a repeating process where they say this money is for whatever program, and on paper it seems like it is, but they will say year after year that we need more money because we don't have enough money for these programs. So that's that's my thing, and then that directly affects your wage, because the people that make more typically have the larger houses, which again, it's kind of a linear value. So the more your house is worth, the more you pay in taxes. So it really does affect the rich quite a bit. Anyway, that's my spiel.
Where I live, property values have been really escalating, and so the taxes have. We used to have trim, which would limit how much the taxes would go up, but they've kind of found ways to work around that. So it's just my assessment every time is just crazy.
Oh, wait till that purple line comes through.
It's nice if you want to sell it that houses are worth more, but my property taxes are five times what they were when I bought the house.
But Heather, it could be worse. You could be living on Long Island.
Yeah, but I mean, the state of New York. As Heather mentions trim. I mean, Montgomery County is supposed to have this cap, but it's a fake cap because the county council can easily just vote to override it, basically, and say, we're not going to follow that and do whatever they want to do. So it's a completely useless thing. And to Jeff's point about these taxes, I mean, one of my biggest pet peeves about things are transportation taxes, because, theoretically the gas taxes and things like that are supposed to go into these transportation funds, which are supposed to maintain roads and bridges.
Right, yeah.
But what do they do? They always are raiding that trust fund, basically, and they're using it for other things, and then there's no money left to repair the roads and bridges, and we go through this endless cycle, of stuff, right? It's never ending.
And now Joe Biden wants to raise the federal gas tax.
Yeah, I saw. I don't think that's going to go through. I don't think there's enough.
I am glad it's not going to go through. Thank you, Senator Susan Collins.
Yeah.
By the way, it's speaking of infrastructure, you notice the left wants to put light rail everywhere. I hear they want to do. I mean, you have Peter Franchot who wants to do light rail from Cumberland, Maryland, all the way to Ocean City. It's like, why don't you get your car and drive to Ocean City? It's such a beautiful drive from Cumberland to Ocean City.
There's no.
Now, Dwight, I thought you were going to say build any kind of light rail line to Ocean City, because I love Ocean City and we need more people in Ocean City.
Yes, we do, but they can drive. I'd rather have another bridge span going to Ocean City. I'd love
light
to
rail
see
is so
tunnel.
much greener than driving, Dwight.
Actually, it's not. If you
I
look at
think
the
we
big
need to wait
picture,
and see how people react to the post-pandemic universe. Do they want to get back on public transportation or not? I'm not sure.
Well, I would, I like the rail. I mean, I've ridden on Amtrak before, but the
We've
problem
seen
is
a
that
lot of
Amtrak
people
is
not
not.
using public
But
transportation because of the pandemic.
well, it's not just that. But when I was on it before, this is like prior to the pandemic. I went from like Michigan to Chicago, and I took Amtrak. But it's just like it was more expensive than driving. It was almost cheaper to fly than it was to take the train. And this is just, this wasn't a
Sometimes
diner,
it really is.
especially. It was just a normal train. And I'm like, why is this so expensive? If we really want people to take the train, I mean, again, we already have train infrastructure, so if we want to reuse it for passenger trains, fine. That's just creating, the actual cars and stuff. That's not a huge expense. We're not talking about infrastructure here, but again, the cost. It's just like, who would do this? This doesn't make sense for, economically for anyone.
and I'll tell you this.
Build more light rail, because light
Competition is what
rail
makes people do a good job.
That's true. Although my old boss, Paul Wyrick, is a big champion.
Popular liberal thing.
Yeah.
But it's worse in San Francisco, and they got like,
Don,
the trolleys.
Paul Wyrick was a fan of Amtrak. Yeah, he liked rail. Paul Wyrick, Bill
He was
Lynn,
on
Wendell Cox.
the National Railway Board. He always had meetings he had to go to.
Yeah, Wendell Cox is another one that was a big fan of Amtrak. Here's the thing: Amtrak can be made efficient.
If you look at Britain,
but
they have actual competition in the train decently because they have different companies competing with each other. Train service.
Yeah.
The Empire was always good at building railroads. The Empire was good at that, railroads. And I think we're getting close to final thoughts, John.
The British were doing like our kind of thing where they nationalized, and then Margaret Thatcher turned it back over to the private sector, and they have competition and taking trains in Britain, and they actually, are priced and they run.
Dr. Olson, but we refer to the Great Britain as the Empire, just simply the Empire. Because my book that I'm working on, it's actually eerily coming to fruition with Prince Henry and Meghan Markle coming to America, and the joke was he's gonna go to Canada, raise an army, and retake the empire, and bring back the British Empire, to its glory days. Kind of like when the Klingons, want to go back to the glory days of the empire, But that's my piece. But we're at final thoughts, plural, so you can have more than one thought. But before we get to that, I do want to mention, Heather, the point you said, I had nothing. I was referring to the Crimean War, where the powers on the good guys were the Austrian Empire, the Habsburgs, the House of Habsburgs. This was also known as their last hurrah. They were not. They were supporting the war efforts. They supported the Ottoman Empire, the French.
Austria was neutral in the Crimean War.
Publicly, they were neutral, but publicly they were neutral. They were the peacemakers there.
Neutral quotation.
Yeah,
there's a famous quotation. Czar knew that the Austrians would support them, as he had supported, because Franz Joseph, the Russians had supported Franz Joseph in 1848.
Yes, but here's the thing: the Habsburgs were, yes, they were neutral, just like we were neutral during World War II, and we did Lend-Lease. They were friendlier to the French and the British and the Sardinians. Who ever thought of Sardinia ever going to war? And the Ottomans, the Ottoman Empire, and you had the Russians and the Greeks were the belligerents, so to speak. But it was more the Russians, and the Russians lost that war. And I had a professor at George that referred to that as the last hurrah of the Habsburgs. So that's where I get the last hurrah of the Habsburgs from. Anyways, but now the final thoughts. Heather, Dr. Olson, we'll start with you with your final thoughts. You can have more than one, too.
Well,
Having audio issues, Heather?
Yeah, I'm not getting anything.
Yeah, looks like it's frozen.
Heather, we'll come back to you. Final thoughts, Jeff, Dr. Thornton.
Yeah, I don't know. It's been a crazy week. I guess happy Juneteenth for everyone who celebrates that. Since it's a federal holiday, and happy Father's Day for all the fathers out there.
Yeah.
Beyond that, it seems like the cicada season is almost over. So
yeah,
you can kind of put this.
Nary a cicada in sight, and I can't. You don't even hear them anymore.
I was me and my brother-in-law were doing yard work today. He was mowing, I was trimming, and I swear I was like, I don't know what it is about it, but when I was trimming, I mean, I had like 20 cicadas just like land on me, just like, you know, like they love me or something. I don't know. Hopefully this will be like the last of that. So.
Yeah, I tell you, those cicadas, you know, they're in their last throes, as the greatest defense secretary, Don Rumsfeld, would say. The cicadas are in the last throes. And but I tell you, the other day when I was at Martha's, I heard a lot of cicadas at Martha's, Don, when I was there for a meeting Tuesday at her place.
I mean, they're done. I mean, if you have trees around, look at your tree tip. You know, just those branches. That's where the eggs are, and they'll fall to the ground soon and burrow underneath, and won't hear from them for 17 years.
In the backyard, I mean, we had a tree that we were going around. I mean, the tree was like literally surrounded, like, you know, like a carpet of these cicada shells, which, you know, when they go out of the larva form. So I mean, there are literally thousands upon thousands of these things. It was just a mat of these shells. So I don't know. It's crazy. I mean, I don't know how you can, like, you know, hibernate for 17 years, but I mean, good on them, I guess.
It's kind of they're like the Ripon Winkles of insects, Jeff.
Yeah. Hit me up when the country gets better. I'm gonna say
and somehow they're part of the shrimp family. So I don't know.
I love the memes about the cicadas data. I was asleep for 17 years. There's still construction on 695, and they're not wrong. I remember, you know, I could go back to when I was a kid. I remember going to Harrisburg. There's construction on 695 in 1976, and it's still there today.
Wow.
Just saying, you know, like, and but yeah. So, Don, final thought.
This last thing too. Final thought. I mean, really, it's not a big final thought, but I did enjoy the conference last weekend.
Our state party convention last Friday night.
Yeah, state party convention.
Thank you for doing the pictures.
Yeah, I was gonna say that was great. I was glad to take pictures. And Dwight, do you have a site for them to anyone who's there? Pictures?
Yes, I did. Yeah, I put them up on Action Montgomery /convention 1 or 2. I'm not sure exactly what the link is. Let's see, is it -1? Maybe, but it is definitely a convention. We'll take the pictures that I took. And the second one is the pictures that you put up.
Okay.
I should just use the same name and added them on there. But anyways, yeah, I'll share that. I'll send you that link.
We'll do a battle of the photographers. It'll be like, you know, Dwight versus Jeff.
I used my iPhone more than I use my Nikon, and I want to say the iPhone does right. I mean, I can't zoom in like I can with my Nikon, but.
Yeah, I don't know. I just like getting a physical camera. It's just something about it. Just like I'm old school like that. If I could get a phone camera, I probably would use that. You know, just.
Yeah. Let's talk offline. I've got some. I've got right here. I'm looking at it actually. Yeah. You know, I'm actually looking for a Pentax K1000. So if any of our viewers know where I could find one, I just want one for nostalgia purposes.
Those are very popular on eBay.
Yeah, I mean, it's like that was my first camera in high school. Took a lot of nice pictures. You know, with that over the years, it was like a Timex. It's fallen down the stairs in my backpack with all these books, and nothing broke. You know. Yeah.
See, I'm looking for a Nikon F series, like an F, you know, 2 or 4 or something. Yeah. Like that,
let me see which one I've got. You know, I've got a couple.
All right.
Heather, can you hear us now? Heather, I think you've frozen.
Yeah, she's still frozen on my screen here.
Yeah, she's frozen. I think she may have had her connection may have dropped. Don, final thoughts?
Final thoughts. A couple of things, I guess. One is the Fairfax County school board member who's a Muslim who gave a commencement speech.
Oh my God, we forgot to talk about that. Was insane.
Yeah, I mean, first, I mean, she was speaking to us to Justice High School graduates, which was renamed because it was it Jeb Stuart High School. They had to rename it for that. And
I think the mascot is the Warriors, so like the Justice Warriors is the high school.
Yeah, right. Well, yeah, it fits in with her message, right? She wants them. She's trying to get the students to become Justice Warriors, and just about called for jihad, and stuff like that. So it's just, it's absolutely nuts that we can have this, but this feeds right into all this stuff too. I mean, we're seeing this backlash against things like this and critical race theory. Congratulations to Republicans against this in state after state. It's driving the liberals absolutely up a wall. They don't think this is necessary, but there has to be some stopgap measure here for some of the stuff that they're trying to shove down the throats of our kids. So if that's what it takes, then that's what it's going to take. And then the other thing really is just with the commission, the over $29 million winning bid to fly into space with Jeff Bezos. I think that's a lot of money for about an 11-minute trip, right? Because space really, this is a suborbital mission in essence.
Right.
But it's not
this is like the Red Bull, descent. It's lower atmosphere. You're
basically like Chuck Yeager. You're basically like Chuck Yeager.
Technically space, as defined, and so it's not what people I think they originally thought it was, but that's a heck of a lot of money to pay to fly with Bezos, and I guess Bezos's brother will be on there too. I heard somebody was kind of wondering, it's like, does the Amazon board? I guess he's still chairman of the board, but he's not running the day-to-day stuff or whatever his role is over there. It's like, should they not prevent someone like that who's their main brain trust from taking something that there's a risk, right? I mean, it's probably going to be okay, but there's still a risk, of doing this.
I don't know what rocket you would take, but yes, there's still failures in launches. So not every launch platform is 100%.
Yeah. So
it's kind of like, was it Chuck Yeager that parachuted out? He went in the upper stratosphere and he parachuted down. I think it was Chuck Yeager.
Chuck Yeager did the X-1.
He did the sound barrier.
Well, he also did the but he also did the experimental airplanes that were the predecessor to like the SO-71 Blackbird.
Yeah, no, he also. But I don't think there was an astronaut that went up and then he basically was there to test something and he went up and he parachuted out.
Maybe, I don't know.
I'm trying to think.
He did all crazy stuff. So
yeah, the winner who's going to fly up in this thing, I mean, they're going to have to undergo a lot of training and everything too, because they're going to get several G's on this, right? I mean,
I guess Sleepy Joe's out of the running for this.
Yeah, I mean, it's like you can't just say I won the bid, and it's like, so can I schedule this flight for like 3 months from now? I'll be fine, and and not really get trained for this, because it's going to be quite a ride.
Can we all chip in and send Camilla if they promise not to let her come back? Send her on a mission to Mars.
Yeah, that'll take.
Yeah. But NASA's, I'll say, partisan as it may be, but Bill Nelson's not a half bad NASA director. Bill Nelson, former senator from the great state of Florida. I mean, he hasn't. He's done a great job as head of NASA for the last 6 months or so.
Yeah. So Dwight can like Democrats.
But, so quick question, Dwight. Do you actually think that a mission to Mars is that a reasonable thing we should be talking about right now, or should we still wait until
Okay. I want to build. I'll go back to my sci-fi. I want to build Moonbase Alpha, and I want to store all of our nuclear.
You want this whole Space 1999, don't you?
Yeah. Yes. I want to store all of our nuclear waste there, because we know when the moon leaves its orbit, nothing happens to the Earth, and it becomes a satellite. But I think we do need to build a moon base, which would take us to Mars. We do need to become spacefaring. And by the way, going to Mars doesn't make us spacefaring. It's a civilization. We need to be in interstellar space traveling civilization where we can be called spacefaring. Going to Mars is like it's kind of like going up the street to the 7-Eleven. You're not really leaving your neighborhood. Leaving your neighborhood and going to Australia, that's spacefaring civilization. and we need to get, and I think it's possible where technology and science rules the day.
Do you think it's possible to go to Mars and set up a colony there?
I think so. I think so. We could do it. There's a lot of, it's like, see, we didn't get to the moon by saying, is it possible? It's like, what if? And that's, the thing that.
So I would say this: if the actual money invested into the mission to Mars, which is going to be in the trillions of dollars, if that money was invested into research programs, which fed back into new technology in the U.S., for example, we talked about this before. It's like I'm a big proponent of like next gen nuclear and having our own research in fusion reactions. So again, if that was part of the plan and we invested that money into these research programs to get these things matured, then I would support it, because I'd be like, this is an end goal. This is like the mission to Mars is the the end game of like all these other projects which get us more mature in these technologies. So yes, I'd support that because it gets us along the path. But just saying, yeah, we can using conventional technology without any build up of that, I'm like, what does that gain us? What have we achieved besides just a flag? What have we achieved?
Well, remember, there's a lot of things. Remember, offshoot of the Apollo programs and the moon shots, Corning made lives easier for a lot of.
Sure. So we had Corning. We had the Apollo guidance computer was the first use of semiconductors. So of course that helped that process.
Yes, computing. Remember, we went the computers that were like a VIC-20 is what we used to get to the moon, frankly, and all that.
It wasn't it wasn't that. It was wire wrapped memory.
So it was even like a VIC-20? I thought it was always like the joke.
We're talking about wire wrapped memory. So RAM and ROM was all wire wrapped. Ferrite core memory. This was very, very, reliable, but very primitive by today's standards. So not at all like modern semiconductors. Though the modern semiconductors were used for the sensors and for like the other types of controlling systems. But the memory and RAM, that was all like, it was literally ferrite core memory.
And there's actually been a lot of achievements from space research. Everything from night vision. I don't want to say night vision goggles, but I remember back in the day there was a thing about space research, and there was this thing about they had this woman who was blind at night, but because of our moon missions and some technology, the offshoot of the space program allowed her to see at night with these special glasses.
Sure, and in the ISS and other things like that, we do research there. Those have practical purposes.
Yeah.
My question is, what do we get by going to Mars that we can't get by going to the moon or setting up more?
Well, we need to go to Mars. What if there's oil there? We should send Halliburton. What if there's some rare earth metals, or would they be rare Mars?
The cost of it would just be extra.
By today's technology, but if you this is where we are today. Okay, we are in the days of, as in space travel is kind of like remember the how long it took if you were living in Europe and you wanted to send supplies to India, you'd have to go all the way around the Cape of Good Hope. This is before the passage to India, the railroad from Cairo down to which cut the trip by a couple of months, I think. We're kind of in those days where we got to go around the Cape of Good Hope to do that. But today, you're there in 8 hours. Fly from you could be from London to Bombay is I think an 8 hour, 12 hour plane.
But again, so even if saying Mars has mineral resources, we can't even recycle properly. We're talking about why go to such lengths to get something from Mars that we can get locally that we're not even really focusing on. So again, I'm not just saying we can't do it, but what do we get from that? So obviously if the Indian trade routes did give sugar to various peoples, gave rum, gave the pepper, all the spices and stuff. These are things that people needed. But if they had it locally, they wouldn't need those trade routes. So unless there's something unique, what is there really? If we find an artifact there, sure. A big monolith that tells us how to navigate the universe, that'd be great. But anyway, I can tell Don's just like zoned out. He's like,
we need to get to we need to finish our final thoughts.
Yeah, sorry, I kind of deviated.
So Don, final thoughts? Are you?
That was it. You can go now.
That was it. Okay. First of all, I want to show everyone who hasn't been to a Maryland State Party convention in a while. We've come a long, long way. This was the scene of our convention. Look at that. Very, very posh jumbotrons. We had multimedia capable. It was awesome. Thank you, Dirk Hare. Thank you, everyone who made the convention such a smashing success. You know, it was a great convention. You know, I think we haven't seen, you know, like this is like, I mean, if you guys, Don, you probably remember when we used to have our banners held up by duct tape. We've come a long way from those days. You know, we're looking good. We're in the, you know, we're living the good life now, so to speak, as conventions go. So that's one of my final thoughts. My other final thought is, I want to say, you know, the cicada season is over. Almost, and things are getting back to normal. So go out, support your local business right now. There's more and more waits out there. Like I know when we were out there trying to go out to dinner Friday night after the last Friday, there was we went to Cheesecake Factory at a 2.5, almost like a 2-hour wait. This other place had like a 2-hour wait, and then we ended up at the Green Turtle where there was no wait, and that was a good Republican-owned establishment, Green Turtle, over there in Linthicum, Maryland. Beautiful location, great service. Thank you, everyone there at the Green Turtle who's let us hang around there for well past your closing time. And there was a lot of, you could still get some Dr. Politics stickers and swag. Just send us an email. We'll drop it in the mail to you. We got some great swag from the convention still left over. And it was just a lot of fun. I will be in Florida next Friday. So Dr. Thornton will be on comm, so to speak. Welcome. And I might try and get on, depending on where I am Friday night in Florida. But most likely I won't be able to be on. But I will be in. But I'll be back the following Friday, I think. Or if not that, Jeff, you might do 2 weeks on comms here. So, but I have a lot of pictures from my vacation, and I'll do some videos of going around and see how things are in Florida. Let you know if there's any super spreaders or anything like that. I'll be on the ground in Florida. I may dial in or something like that for a few minutes. I don't know, but it'll be a lot of fun. Oh, by the way, Jeff, I may also have you run the comms for the Direct Line show too. So a busy week. Well, not this week, but the following week. I definitely have to do it Wednesday the following week. We'll have Ethan Gutman on. But it's been all in all a good week. Unfortunately, Dr. Olson's connection dropped off. Heather's an old friend of ours from the old days of the Maryland GOP back. You know, she was the chair in Prince George's County. So welcome, Heather. We'd love to have you on again in the future. And all in all, everything's good. Oh, one more thing. I do have one thing I want to say. Now that we're all back driving on the roads and all that, can you slow people get the hell out of the left lane? I'm sorry. You know, don't go 55 miles an hour in the left lane, frankly. It is just rude, you know, and you're going to cause an accident. So get out of the left lane. That's my final thought. Good night, everyone. And we'll see everyone. I'll see everyone in probably 2 weeks. Everyone else, you guys will see the other doctors next week. So have fun, and it'll be 2 weeks of Agnew Nixon free.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Yeah, there'll be no mentions of Vice President Agnew or President Nixon.